All right, guys, we just want to welcome back to Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here, bringing 2024 preview and prediction for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. PJ Fleck back for his 8th year, 50 and 34 mark thus far. Greg Harbaugh Jr. and Matt Simon will be the offensive coordinator. And Corey Heatherman, last 2 years spent at Rutgers, will step into the defensive coordinator role following the departure of Joe Rossi. 2 seasons under Greg Schiano as the linebacker coach out there in Piscataway. Very aggressive scheme he coaches with. I think this is a pretty underrated hire here. And obviously the biggest headlines, Rossi's departure and the 4 defensive players drafted in the last 2 cycles, showing some, strength there. Looking at the offensive side of the ball, this is a unit that drastically disappointed, Nick, and obviously they were just not very good across the board. I thought the run game was good, but the passing game just continues to be a problem for them. Tanner Morgan started his career good a couple seasons ago, didn't end it very well, and it's just really been a problem since then. Nathan Kaliakmanis wasn't very good, 53% comp rate, 9 picks in his season, 153 yards per contest. It wasn't very good, and obviously this scheme doesn't seem to be very friendly for quarterbacks. But at the same time, I feel like they should be able to showcase some more balance. And they're hoping Max Brosmer from New Hampshire is going to be the answer. He has quick release. Touchdown field is good. Lofts it right over the defense into a bucket. Good speed as a runner. I like the downfield ball placement. He plays with some confidence. Has good IQ. Playing a good amount of football. 6'2", 221. What do you make of this young cat here, Nick? And a lot of guys that are fans of this program are, pretty excited for what Brosmer can bring to the table. Is he going to be the answer, though?
I like the ad here. I think Max Brosner is a really solid ad from New Hampshire. A guy that people loved in the portal when he entered the portal. He's one of the higher rated quarterbacks available. He ends up settling on Minnesota. I think it's a natural fit for him, a really nice move. He jumps up from the Wildcats, New Hampshire Wildcats, that play in the FCS level, a pretty solid team up there in New Hampshire. Now he jumps up to this Big Ten level here at Minnesota, who really struggled passing the ball last year. They were horrendous through the air. They really couldn't get anything going. 143.4 pass yards per game, 126th in the nation in passing. They lost their quarterback, moved on to Rutgers, and now they got Brosmer, who comes in here 6'2", 221. I like the size of him. I think the arm is good, high football IQ, very confident, good experience at the FCS level. I think this is a really solid ad, a very underrated ad, and could really be a key for this offense succeeding.
And I think a big reason why they will succeed is, they got their top 2 rushers back, and they also picked up a nice one in Seya Bangira from Ohio. 1,900 yards and 20 touchdowns for him over the last 2 years. A guy who's a physical runner, thrives in the open field. What I like about Darius Taylor is a guy who has nice suddenness. Really like his jump cut, great burst. Doesn't show much long speed, but has nice change of direction at times. 800 yards in 6 games following an injury. Absurd production for him. He quickly proved he could be a workhorse as well. As early on into the year, he had 2 games of 30-plus touches, going for 100-plus, 90-plus yards. And he also had 20-plus for 138 in a loss against North Carolina. And into the bowl game, 35 for 208 and a touchdown against Bowling Green. This is a guy who's going to get a healthy workload this season, but he also has nice options to spell him. The aforementioned Bangira, Marcus Major coming over from Oklahoma. He's played sparingly over 5 years, has good ball security. That's really all he brings to the table. And I think this is nice. Returning Nubbin, he had 40 carries for 200-plus yards against Michigan State. Was pretty efficient in the final few games of the season he played in. Really good running back room here, Nick. Obviously, they're able to plug in anybody and get production out of him. Nubbin's 200-plus for a guy who was considered a second-string back. They just threw anybody into the rotation, it seemed. And at the end of the year, again, he was very efficient. Sean Tyler, I thought he would have a good year. Didn't, he didn't see the field very much. But this is a really good running back room, Nick, one that's incredibly underrated in this conference.
Love this running back room. Taylor, 800 yards on the ground last year, 5.8 yards per carry, and 5 scores for him. Also had 11 pass catches out of the backfield. Solid numbers there. Jordan Nubbins, 560 yards on the ground, 4.4 yards per carry, and 3 scores for him. Really solid back. 2 really good backs. So they had some nice ads from the portal that you alluded to. Some really solid players they bring over. I think this running back room is very deep. Really solid rotational opportunity here. I like this room a lot.
And, you look at the wide receiver room, the one that last year I thought was incredibly good. The production obviously wasn't, due to poor quarterback play, wasn't as stellar as it probably should have been. Daniel Jackson returns, though. Not the biggest, fastest, or strongest guy, but really thrives with contested catches, creates separation very well, had 107 targets, has good contact balance, and seems like a pretty good threat in the vertical routes at 6', 200. Lameek Brockington will step into a full-time role after only a few touches last year. Elijah Spencer was pretty disappointing a season ago. This is a guy who has big playability and was a standout for Charlotte in the past. Thought he'd get on the field a lot more, and he just didn't. Jalen Varner jumps from the D2 level to the Big Ten. And, outstanding career at Emporia State. Obviously, he's going to step up into a lot harder competition. Kendrick Lanier, a 3-star from Georgia, good athletic ability, strong speed, enters his second season. The son of Donald Driver, former Packer standout. Christian Driver's on this roster. Tyler Williams, a high-end 4-star from the Georgia Bulldogs. A player who has the ability to seriously be a big-time playmaker here on the perimeter. Solid unit, lots of unproven depth. A few guys that will be good ball players, I would think. You look at tight end quickly. Brevin Spanford also didn't really play to his potential last season. This group isn't all that impressive. Nick Collerup expected to be the starter. Should be a big help in the run blocking game, with the backups mainly having no production either. I don't know what to expect from tight end. What do you make of this wide receiver group, Nick? One that seemed to be all over the place. Chris Ottoman-Bell just couldn't stay healthy the last couple years. Corey Crooms was okay, but again, not as good as he should have been. And Darius Taylor, who only played in 6 games with 11 receptions for 92 yards, was the 4th leading receiver. That's a lot of concern, especially since they just didn't use the guys properly last year due to poor quarterback play.
It's a very odd wide receiver room, but there is some nice return production with Jackson, who is the only player that really does return production, but his returning production is solid. 831 yards receiving, 14.1 yards per grab, and 8 scores for him. Really good numbers coming back. Brockington is a solid player. He had 1 touchdown on 5 grabs last year. Elijah Spencer had 9 grabs and 3 touchdowns. Kind of impressive numbers there for him. Tyler Williams and Christian Driver, 2 good ads. Williams from Georgia, Driver from Penn State. Really solid ads there. You highlighted Lanier as well. He could potentially be involved. I think with better quarterback play, this wide receiver room will improve. I think this is a room that's not terrible. They're not incredible. I'm sort of leaning the same way I did when we talked about Michigan State, where it's not an incredible room, but it's still a serviceable room that will be solid in the Big Ten.
Look at the offensive line, a unit that should also be very strong, led by left tackle Ariante Urzuri. Was a great one blocker. You often get beat inside on pass pro, though, against quickness. Had some real rough games in that regard. Only had 2 sacks allowed, though, both coming against Michigan. Go figure, an incredible defensive line there. Needs to find better consistency, but a player at 6'6", 325 is very good. Left guard, Tyler Cooper was phenomenal in pass protection on the other hand. Very limited pressures allowed. 6'5", 315. He should continue to develop in the run game as well. Nathan Bowe, they lose him, a very, very good player at center, replacing him with Greg Johnson, who really struggled when he played at left guard. Quite big for a center at 6'6", 320, but the confidence is very high when it comes to his football IQ. The communication should be strong from his end. Quinn Carroll, 2 straight seasons of starting at right tackle. He's been an abysmal pass blocker, though, despite being a really strong asset in the run game. Kicking him the right guard seems to make the most sense. Martez Lewis, he's back after an up-and-down season where he was at right guard, might even play some tackle. Massive size, 6'7", 335. I think, Carroll's going to really thrive on the inside. That's where they decided to put him. I think the offensive line played really well last year. Need more stability, though. The yards per carry number was quite low, but, pretty healthy, compromised. The health of running back was compromised, that is, a good bit, so that certainly didn't help. Obviously the poor quarterback play didn't make this offensive line look any better. I think they're going to have a pretty good unit here, Nick. I love Urzuri at left tackle. I think Carroll's going to thrive at right guard. I think Johnson's a guy that I really like, and Cooper, he was a very underrated part of this unit. Can they live up to the potential, though?
I think this is a very solid left side. Urzuri is one of the best left tackles in the country. A really solid player. I think he's one of the best players on this team. A really good run blocker. Love the size on him. I think Cooper right there, partner with him on the left side, is another really solid player. That's a really nice 1-2 punch you have on the left side. I think Quinn Carroll will be a really solid impact player at right guard. I like the move for him a lot. Phillip Daniels, Greg Johnson, 2 other guys that could be starters that could be solid here. Reese Tripp as well. Could he potentially move to right tackle? What is he going to look like? Some other players being moved around here. Filling holes, Greg Johnson, is he going to be moved around as well? So I think there is some opportunity to find some guys that can grow, but I do really like Johnson at center. I think he's a solid player. I love Cooper, and I love Ezra on the left side. 2 really solid players on the left side of this offensive line.
Certainly have some questions at right tackle, though. Phillip Daniels, Wilma Nakil, Spencer Alvarez, guys are going to battle for that position. The rest of the unit seems pretty strong, though. The verdict for me on this side of the ball, the Gophers fandom seems excited for what Brosmer can do for this passing game and more stability from the quarterback. It's going to pay big dividends for a group that's loaded at running back, has a physical line with some good size, and a wide receiver room that even has a few guys I think can emerge as reliable players. Improvement is on the way, but the quarterback position must do its thing for that to take shape. Defensive side of the ball, Joe Rossi did a pretty good job in the years prior, but this past season, they kind of fell apart. 69th in points per game. They're still good in terms of allowing yards. They lost 2 guys in the portal, added 4. They're going to shift from a 4-2-5 to a 4-3. Returning 9 starters. They have a very good defensive line despite limited production. Jot Joyner at DN, at 6'5", 250. Great length matched with, high-end explosion, good bend to turn the arc. Was a good pass rusher of his efficiency. Overall strength is just poor, though, and causes him to struggle versus the run immensely. Needs to develop better hand usage also. Danny Strigo coming off an impressive season. Really impressed with his improved pass rushing. Some good experience in the backup in Anthony Smith and Lucas Venezzi. Also added Jackson Howard, a top 150 recruit who comes back home from LSU as a true freshman. Physically impressive and has some twitch to his game. Jalen Logan Redding also been around a long time on this interior. Devin Easter and Logan Richer, vets that played a good bit last year. Easter was solid, the latter not so much. And Darnell Jeffries in his 7th season of ball, not playing due to injury last year. Not sure what he'll provide. Plenty of guys on the depth chart. Not much experience or proven difference makers, Nick, outside of Joyner and Strigo. Questionable unit. What do you think this defensive line can accomplish?
I like Strigo. I think he's a really solid player. They return a really solid player that gets after the quarterback. Good pass rusher, 51 total tackles for him, 7 tackles for loss, 6 sacks for him. Jot Joyner, 18 total tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. Your leader in those 2 categories that returns. I think he's a very underrated player at edge there. Really solid player. Devon Eastern, 28 total tackles plus 1 tackle for loss. Decent enough production returning from him. Jalen Logan Redding, 29 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Decent enough numbers there as well. I like what I've seen there. I think there are some other players. Logan Richter could be okay this year for this team, could potentially step up and be involved. So I think this is not a terrible unit. I do think this unit has some nice upside.
Only 56 tackles for loss for this unit. They just don't generate many negative plays, and it's kind of been the case under Rossi for a couple of seasons where they play tough and hard without being able to put guys behind the sticks. That certainly limits their upside. I think this is certainly a unit that can certainly improve in that regard. You look at the middle of this defense, ravaged by injuries last season, but it allowed younger players to get on the field. Cody Lindenberg was on pace for a strong season if he played all year, but didn't take the field till November. Missed a lot of tackles, though. Devon Williams should start alongside him. Maverick Brenner-Rakowski was solid in coverage. Matt Kingsbury and Joey Gerlach played a few snaps each. Should see better consistency here with improved health, especially with Heatherman Nick being a linebacker coach under the great Greg Schiano. So I certainly think there's some nice upside for this linebacking room. They got to be able to stay healthy.
I like this room. This is some solid players. Devon Williams, 52 total tackles for him, plus a pick. Maverick Baranski, 52 total tackles as well, 5 tackles for loss for him. Cody Lindenberg really does struggle at missing tackles, but overall I think he's a solid player. 31 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss for him. They return him as a decent player as well. This is not a bad unit here. I think this is a unit that has some solid players. Joey Gerlach, if he can stay fully healthy, he didn't play a whole lot last year. Only had 1 tackle throughout the entire season through 13 games where he just played as a kind of role player. Was battling some health as a redshirt freshman. I think this is a unit that has some solid pieces. I do like the coaching as well to kind of elevate these guys.
Now you look at the secondary, a unit that of course loses an elite safety there in Tyler Nubbin. Also lose a good corner in Trayvon Jones, but they do return Justin Whaley, a guy who's got good quick feet, nice change of direction ability. I like the nice back pedal. Overall exceptional coverage skills, has the closing speed to thrive in zone. Needs to keep improving his ball production, and despite being sound versus the run, tackling technique needs work. This is going to be one of the better corners in the country there. Justin Whaley. Jack Henderson, he was a great player for them, especially in coverage, a versatile player who, thrives in the box a lot, and he's also in the slot a good bit. Opposite of Whaley, probably looking at Ethan Robinson. He played the past 3 years at Bucknell, was a quality corner for them. Zaquan Bryan played a bit at the end of the year. Jayonte McMillan transferred in from TCU. He can play the nickel as well due to his nice athletic ability. Obviously, replacing Nubbin is going to be incredibly difficult. Darius Green played nearly 500 snaps last year. Wasn't all that impressive, though. Coy Purich, number 5 overall safety. They beat out Ohio State for him. Destined to play early. Good closing speed. Likes to embrace contact. They're very excited to keep the, in-state, high-end recruit home. Coleman Bryson saw a lot of time last year in only 6 games. He won the Bowl MVP back in 2022. Remember that game? I think he had a pick 6 in that one. 3-star redshirt freshman Kerry Brown also in the rotation. This is a good secondary, I would say. I think CB is a little iffy outside of Whaley. They had some poor performances last year when they shouldn't have. They got absolutely throttled by Northwestern, for example. That was kind of strange early on in the year. Illinois, I think, had a little more success than they should have. Purdue ran for 353 yards in a game, in a stretch where they allowed 200-plus in 3 straight, where they didn't allow 200-plus rushing yards at all, Nick, outside of that, even against Michigan. So this defense certainly had issues at times. What do you make of the secondary, though? I think underperformed, but I think they're going to be all right this year.
So unit that has some solid players. Henderson, I like him a lot. 59 total tackles, your top returning tackler. 5 tackles for loss, 2 picks for him. Darius Green, 51 total tackles. Justin Wally, 45 total tackles. Each of them had a couple tackles for loss. Wally, 8 pass breakups. Coleman Brinson, 25 total tackles, and Aiden Goudsby, 10 total tackles as well. Some solid returning across the board. Ethan Robinson, a good add. Cope Parrish, like you said, a really solid, high-end recruit that they beat out Ohio State for. Number 5 overall safety. He's going to be solid, nice speed, really good to keep him home. Overall, I don't think the secondary unit's terrible. I don't think it's phenomenal either. They were decent against the pass last year, right? 219 pass yards per game, 59th in the nation. I think it'll be a similar defense despite losing Nubbin, who really was productive in coverage for this team.
Looking at the verdict for this side of the ball, alterations to the scheme will be interesting to watch as they significantly lack production, but they have still been good under Joe Rossi. Now they're going to move to a more aggressive attacking style. They got some ball players on the front seven, some solid upside in the secondary. Run defense did get annihilated at times, especially late in the year, really. So that area needs to improve. This is a good unit here, though, and I think Corey Heatherman is going to bring some good knowledge from Rutgers. I think it's certainly going to allow them to improve after giving up 150 yards per game on the ground last year. So at times it really did be a struggle for them. Final preview and prediction for the Minnesota schedule. Same story, different year for Minnesota's. They have good ball players across the board, energetic head coach. But if the QB plays stagnant once again, it's just not going to matter. I certainly think Brosmer elevates this attack, which will allow the run game to really thrive behind a sound offensive line to establish better balance. The defense will also be a sturdy unit for the most part. Unlikely to be a difference maker versus elite teams, though. I think more stability on the other side, though, really gives the defense a chance to compete. This is a good team here, but you have to be cautious, Nick, because, again, it is the same story every single year, and this is a pretty difficult schedule. I think they're going to be a hot and cold team. Win 3, lose 3, win another 4, and then lose 2 to end the year in games. I think they can certainly win. If they win 4 in a row going into hosting Penn State, Nick, I think there's a great opportunity for them to win that game. I think this is an energetic home crowd. A 7-5 right now. I think this team can certainly win 9 games, and maybe even pull an upset or 2 because they have some nice home draws. I think they annihilate North Carolina week 1. But if the quarterback play again is not better, Nick, none of this matters.
I share the same sentiment. I do think they dominate North Carolina in week 1. That's a game that we're highlighting on Thursday night. They last couple of years, about 10 years in a row now, they've hosted a game on Thursday night, Fox National Television. Always a ruckus crowd. Last year they played Nebraska. They played Ohio State close a few years ago. Always a fun game to watch. Certainly eyes will be on that one. I think they will take care of North Carolina. Rare that they ended up going non-conference for this matchup, but I think they will dominate the Tar Heels in that one. The rest of the schedule is tough, right? That 3-game stretch against Iowa, Michigan, and USC is very difficult. Then they blow warm there, like you suggested, winning 4 games in a row before closing out with 2 losses to end the season. I do think this is a team that is very talented. I think this is a team that has a lot of high upside potential. I think the quarterback play will improve. I think the defense will be solid this year. It's another middle of the road season. PJ Fleck has been a really solid coach for this team. Really consistent. They've been solid under his tenure. When you look at the past couple of records, right, outside the COVID year, but before that they were 11-2 in 2019, but then they were 9-4, 9-4, and 6-7 over the last 3 years. That 11-2 is a bit of an outlier, and before that they were 7-6 in 2018. So a very consistent coach who puts together his guys, gets them motivated, gets the energy going up there in Minneapolis. I like this team to succeed, make a bowl game, and have a pretty solid season.
I'd consider them a lock for over 5 wins and a lock for a bowl game. Be for today's episode. As always, Nick, appreciate you joining me talking Fleck and the Gophers.
Like this team a whole lot. Looking forward to seeing how they do this year.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.